This is number 6 on our study of the Zodiac. As I said, we will probably have 2 more hours on it next week. We'll try to get through some ones here that I think that you'll find extremely interesting. But the one that we're on is not too bad, and that is Gemini. It's the third of the constellations. It's the twins, and it speaks of Christ being the unifier of the entire cosmos, actually, but especially as it relates to Israel and the division that we saw. And yeah, not in this case. The horse Sagittarius does, but no. In this case, it's brethren. It's two groups brought together as one. That's basically what Gemini is all about, and where you have two brothers that have a rift, that they are brought together. That's mainly what it speaks of, and the fact that Christ is the unifier doing that. So we're here in chapter 37 and verse 15. Son of man, take you one stick. Write on it for Judah, and then for the children of Israel. And join them, verse number 17, to one another into one stick. And this is the unification of brothers, because you've got the tribes that are definitely separated, divided, and there's a schism there, and a rift that needs to be corrected, a breach that needs to be filled. And so when the people say, what do you mean by this? It says in verse 19, say to him, behold, I will take the stick of Joseph, the hand of Ephraim, the tribes of Israel, and put them with the stick of Judah. Now this is Judah, Benjamin, and make them one stick, and they shall be one in mine hand. And the sticks whereon thou shalt writest shall be in thine hand before their eyes. And it has the names of Israel and Judah and so forth. Okay, note what he says, verse 22. I will make them one nation in the land upon the mountains of Israel. One king shall be king to them all. They shall no more be two nations, neither shall they be divided into two kingdoms at no more at all. So when you come to Gemini, it is the unification of the tribes. Okay? But now, we have another aspect of this. Israel is also out of the land. They are outcasts. They are scattered abroad. And they need to be brought back to the land and made one, as we just saw here. So let's look at a couple of verses that deal with this. We're in Ezekiel. Let's go back to chapter 34. Obviously, if you're an outcast and you're scattered abroad, you have relatives, you don't know where they are. You can have some in Russia, some in Ethiopia, some in South America, some in Miami, of course, if you're a Jew, some in Los Angeles, there in New York, there are a whole lot of Jews there. Well, what happens? They have to be brought back to be made one. They have to be reassembled. And this is all what we call the Gemini factor. This is all included in that, when Israel will be gathered and made that one nation. Chapter 34, verse number 11, where it says, I will search for my sheep, seek them out. As a shepherd seeks out his flock in the day, that he is among his sheep that are scattered, so will I seek out my sheep. I will deliver them out of the places where they have been scattered. Verse 13, I'll bring them out from the people, gather them from the countries, bring them to their own land, feed them upon the mountains of Israel. I'll feed them in a good pasture, and so forth. It goes on down to say, verse 15, I'll feed my flock and cause them to lie down. Okay, let's go to verse number 23. Now we're going to make a so-called New Testament connection here in just a little bit, the verses we're reading. But it all has to do with this constellation. I will set up one shepherd over them and feed them, even David. Let's go down to verses 30 and 31. They shall know that I'm the Lord, and that they, even the house of Israel, are my people. You're my flock and my pasture, says the Lord. So let's turn now to John chapter 10. Having done this, we can bring the words of Jesus Christ to mind now and understand something even deeper as to what he's talking about. Bringing this scripture to bear, this constellation of the concept of bringing brothers together. Here are the outcasts of Israel out of the land, and they obviously are not one flock. They don't have the one shepherd over them. This needs to be done. John chapter 10, verse number 13. The hireling flees because he's a hireling. That's a neat concept. There's the hireling, aside from the hourly wage, has nothing invested in the flock. So therefore, he has no interest. If it means his own hide, he's going to give up and run and let the flock fend for themselves. But a true shepherd is going to stand there and defend the sheep. And that's what he is saying here. I'm the good shepherd, because he's going to give his life for the sheep if need be. I know my sheep and am known of mine. The Father knows me, even so know I the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. But note verse 16. This has to do with what Ezekiel was talking about in gathering the outcast. Other sheep have I, which are not of this fold. There were Jews that were living outside of the land of Israel in the time of Christ. Some in the land, some out of the land. And that's, of course, what Acts 2 is all about. The Jews that lived in all of these Gentile areas were down there, and the disciples of the apostles were attempting to make them part of this one flock in the land. Other sheep I have, which are not of this fold. Them also I must bring, and they shall hear my voice. That's what the core of the Great Commission is all about. It's going out and telling the outcasts of Israel that the kingdom is coming to the land, and the place they need to be is not outside of the land, but in Jerusalem or within the periphery of Palestine. And note what it says. When this happens, there shall be one fold and one shepherd. That's part of verse 16. So, this constellation speaks of this. All right, let's go from this point to the book of Isaiah, chapter 54. Book of Isaiah, chapter 54. Well, I see a misspelled word. I didn't catch it with the spell check because it's spelled right, but it should be divorced Israel. Isaiah chapter 54. Now, if I were to give a quiz, could you tell me the name of the treaty that lets us know that God married Israel, divorced Israel, and will remarry Israel? There you go. Okay. That's what it is. But Gemini speaks of this because you have the king who is a man and his people being brought together. Now I realize it's man to man, but that's what it is. It is a man in a sense, in this concept, marrying another man. It is a man and his family marrying another man and his family in the sense of this treaty. They're not married in the sense of husband and wife, but it's like that. So that two can live together and function together all as one big happy family. And so Gemini speaks of Israel being remarried to Jesus Christ. That's what all of the hubbub is all about. Verse number 4. Fear not, don't be ashamed, don't be confounded. You'll not be put to shame. Forget the shame of your youth. You not remember the reproach of widowhood anymore. Why? For your Maker is your husband. The Lord of hosts is his name, the Redeemer. The God of the whole earth he'll be called. For the Lord hath called thee as a woman forsaken, and he did. He divorced her. Grieved in spirit, wife of youth, when thou wast refused, saith the Lord. Israel was abandoned by God, her husband. For a small moment I've forsaken thee, but with great mercies, I will gather thee. And Israel is going to be remarried. In a little wrath I hid my face from thee for a moment, but I'll have mercy on you. Chapter 62 of this same book. So start with verse 1 and read down to verse number 5. For Zion's sake will I not hold my peace. For Jerusalem's sake I'll not rest, until righteousness thereof goes forth. The Gentiles, verse 2, shall see it. Kings shall walk in your glory. They'll bask in the glory of the Jews. Thou shalt be a crown in the glory of the hand of the Lord, a royal diadem. Verse 4, thou shalt no more be termed forsaken, neither shall thy land any more be termed desolate. You'll be called Hephzibah, and your land Beulah, in whom the Lord delights, and the land shall be married. So God once again delights in what once was his divorced wife, and he remarries her, and it makes everything new. Now we know that because of verse 5. For as a young man marries a virgin, so shall thy sons marry thee. As a bridegroom rejoices over the bride, so shall thy God rejoice over thee. So, Gemini speaks of Jesus Christ remarrying Israel under new covenant conditions, and they're living happily ever after. Okay, let's move on then to one of my favorites. The crab. And what we're going to do is turn to the book of Genesis chapter 17. Genesis chapter 17. Now, what the crab represents, and in this I really like it, because I see the genius of God here, enabling us to conceive, in this case, of the Abrahamic covenant. Without the Abrahamic covenant, the foundational covenant, the rest of the covenants are worthless. Because if you don't have a covenant with Abraham's seed and land, then forget the kingdom, forget the throne, forget the city, forget everything. So the crab represents the Abrahamic covenant protected. The inside of the crab is where the contents are, but the shell it's protected. But you'll note that the crab has 8 legs. It's built on the foundation of 8 legs. 8 is the number of a new beginning. And the Abrahamic covenant talks about a seed that will have everlasting life, living on a land which will be an everlasting possession. So, but that's not in this life. This is just fleeting and temporary. It's in relation to something brand new. New heaven, new earth, new Jerusalem, and so forth. Now, the number 8 is the number of a new beginning. So, we're here in Genesis chapter 17, and note verse number 7. I'm going to establish my covenant with you, between me and you and your seed after thee for their generations, for an everlasting covenant, to be a God, an everlasting God, to your seed, which is going to have everlasting life. And I'll give to you and your seed the land of Canaan for an everlasting possession. Okay, now great. But what is the sign? What is the token? How will they know? It's not any other number but the number 8. Verse number 12. He that is 8 days old shall be circumcised among you. Every man child in your generation that is born in your house and so forth, he is going to be circumcised. Last part of verse 13. My covenant's going to be in your flesh for an everlasting covenant. And this was the token. So here's the contents of the Abrahamic covenant, and it's seen in this crab here, protected by the shell. And here are the 8 legs that it's based upon. It can move and work and live and so forth based on this concept of newness. Now, for those that would like a little more documentation, we'll not take the time to look it up, but David was the what son of Saul? The 8th son. And with David started a new beginning. David started the new beginning, and he got the covenant called the Davidic covenant. When we have a new beginning on the flood, how many people came out of the ark? 8 people. So that's the number 8, and we could go on and on with that. We won't do it, but someday we'll study the number 8. But it's the number of a new beginning. For example, how many days in the week? 7. But when you start a new week, that's the fooled you, huh? I had to do a little thinking. The day that starts a new beginning is the 8th day. And the circumcision was on the 8th day. Well, listen, there is no extra charge for this great entertainment. Okay, where are we? Let's go back to Hebrews chapter 1. You want to definitely at least be able to cover this crab tonight. Yeah, June the 21st to July 22nd. And by the way, I told Mita Ballard, she asked me if we'd have a book on it. I did, but this week was one of those weeks from where it shouldn't have been from, but it was, and I just could not get this done. I just wanted to make sure I had this done so I could show you. But we will have it where these and all the other graphics that we have will be in the book and all the documentation. Okay, let's move on here. Yeah, this is from June 21st to July the 22nd. And in verse number 2, it says, when God started out originally in creation, He made Jesus Christ, as the verse says, heir of all things. He has in the last days spoken to us by His Son, whom He hath appointed, clear back in the beginning, heir of all things. Now, this is the neat thing about this crab, and we will see it. It'll become really vivid to you. There's somebody that's going to attempt to take the possessions of Jesus Christ and hold them for himself. And so the story of the crab is this. It's Christ coming and binding the man who's taking his and Israel's possessions. That's the left claw. You know, the left hand and so forth. The left arm is that of cursing and the like. And so it binds the strong man. The right hand comes and takes the possession and it possesses its possessions and holds it forever in an everlasting sense. Now, all of this will be brought out as we go here. But let's go to Galatians. Well, we're in the New Testament. We'll not go back to Genesis here, but let's go to Galatians. No, let's go back. Let's go back quickly to Genesis 21. All right. So Abraham wants to have an heir. And talks about his heir and so forth. And God said, one from your own loins will be the heir. But there's a little bit of a conflict because he's got another son, Ishmael, who was actually his firstborn son. It's the law of primogeniture. And Ishmael should have had it, except God said he's not going to come through Hagar or any other woman. Isaac is going to be conceived in Sarah, and that's the only son that I'm going to take for the heir. One from your own bowels, it says, I'm going to take. So what does Sarah say? And here's the principle. Cast out, this is verse number 10 of Genesis 21. Cast out this bondwoman and her son, for the son of the bondwoman shall not be heir with my son, even with Isaac. Now that principle is the ongoing angelic conflict. God has a divine son, Jesus Christ, and God has a son called Lucifer, who was an angel. He's a son in a secondary sense. He is not divine. But what did Lucifer want to do to Jesus Christ? Take his possessions. He wanted to own what Christ has. And therefore, in order to do that, Lucifer has to beat Christ and bind him, or Jesus Christ has to beat Lucifer and bind him and take the possessions back. And so this crab really illustrates the angelic conflict. But it's the angelic conflict as it's focused now upon earth, because that's what Lucifer wants. He wants it all, but this is where the angelic conflict is raging. Matthew 21. Let's go back there. Matthew chapter 21. Well, I brought up 2 points instead of one. I shouldn't have. Matthew 21. And starting with verse number 33. Hear another parable. This crab speaks of this parable. There was a certain householder which planted a vineyard, hedged it round about, digged a winepress, and put a tower there, let it out to husbandmen, went to a far country. When the time of fruit drew near, he sent his servants to the husbandman to receive the fruits. The husband took the servants, beat the one, killed another, stoned another. And again, he sent more servants. Now here's the kingdom in the hands of the Sanhedrin, the corrupt religious people and leaders of Israel. God sent them prophets to try to straighten it all out, and they killed the prophets. That's the picture. Verse 36, he sent other servants more than the first, and they did to them likewise. Last of all, he sent his son. They'll reverence, but surely they'll respect my son. But when the husbandmen saw the son, they said among themselves, this is the what? Heir. The old guy's going to kick off. If we kill the heir, we get the inheritance. This is the heir. Come, let us kill him and let us seize on his inheritance. They caught him and cast him out of the vineyard and slew him. So that's the picture that we have here. And that brings us to point number 1. Christ as the Son has the right to inherit all things based on the Abrahamic covenant. On the 8th day, Jesus Christ was circumcised, and he was linked to the Abrahamic covenant, and as God's man has a right to inherit these things. But the point number 2 is, first have to bind the strong man. Now, behind the scenes, the strong man is Lucifer. But on the other side, it's Antichrist. Who is the one that tries to take the land from Jesus Christ? The throne from Jesus Christ. The glory from Christ. The hearts of the people from Christ. On and on we could go. It's Antichrist who wants to take the kingdom and everything about it. And so somebody's going to have to bind the strong man and bind the stronger person that's giving him this strength before Israel can come in and claim all of their possessions. Now this is found in Matthew chapter 12. Now, we'll just peruse, starting from verse number 22. It's the situation here where they brought him one possessed with the devil, and he cast him out, and they said, yeah, well, he does it by Beelzebub, the prince of devils. Here he is, the front man, but he's got somebody behind him giving him this power. Jesus knew their thoughts and said, wait one second, every kingdom divided against itself is brought to desolation. It can't stand. You have to present a united front in order to move ahead and so forth. But if you're of diverse opinions, then you're not going to stand. So can Satan cast out Satan? Then he goes on down here to verse number 29. And he makes this comment. Now, we're going to go back in the Old Testament and see where he gets. He just didn't come up with this on his own. Else how can one enter into a strong man's house and spoil his goods, except he first bind the strong man, and then he'll spoil the house? I mean, if you're going to rob somebody, you can't go in there and the guy's loaded for bear. He's got a shotgun, handgun, he's ready for you, and you're there empty-handed, and you march in there and wake him up at night, and he grabs the gun, and you say, wait one second, I'm here to rob you. Yeah, right, you'll make it to the door. What do you have to have? You have to have the ability to get the drop on him. You've got to be able to stop him, to bind him, to prevent him from protecting what is rightfully his. The strong man has to be bound. Then you can take his goods. Let's go to Luke chapter 11. That's the very same context and parable, but there's more to the strong man aspect of it that Christ gives. Verse number 21. When a strong man armed keeps his palace, his goods are in peace. But when a stronger than he shall come upon him and overcome him, he takes from him all his armor wherein he trusted and divides his spoils. So, we have initially Adam owning the earth. Lucifer comes and he does what? Takes possession from Adam. So now it's in the ownership of one that is stronger than Adam, obviously. We come to the land of Israel. You're coming to Satan, who with his behind-the-scenes henchmen, the demons and fallen angels, take possession of the land. Then there will be a front man called Antichrist. He, in fact, will be the strong man, attempting to take all of this. When he comes to power, Lucifer just pours out all of his energy into making this man a charismatic, powerful figure to take the world. So he is taking possession of everything that belongs to Jesus Christ. There's only one hope. Somebody stronger than the strong man can come and bind him and take the possessions from him. Now, that's what Christ does. Let's go to the book of Jeremiah, chapter 31. Now, here's where we're going to read 4 or 5 portions, and then we'll come back and piece them all together. We'll make comments as we go, but verse number 10. Hear the word of the Lord, O ye nations, declared among the isles. He scattered Israel, but will gather him and keep him as a shepherd does his flock. Verse 11. For the Lord hath redeemed Jacob and ransomed him from the hand of him that was stronger than he. And that's the point of this graph. Somebody's got to own the possessions. But the one who owns them everlastingly has to, in fact, bind the other one in an everlasting fashion. So, we go there. We're in Jeremiah. Go to chapter 50. Verses 33 and 34. The children of Israel were oppressed together. Now, Israel's captivity, Israel's oppression, Israel's suppression, Israel made slaves, and so forth. Israel prevented from being where they should be, doing what they should do, is all in this concept of binding them. Now, we have a perfect illustration of that in Pharaoh. Let my people go. But Pharaoh kept them in what? Bondage. Binding. No, you're going to stay here and be my slave. And that took them captives and held them fast. They refused to let them go. Their Redeemer is strong. The Lord of hosts is his name. He shall thoroughly plead their cause and give rest to the land. All right, now let's go to Isaiah 14. Isaiah chapter 14. And verse number 2. The people shall take them and bring them to their place, and the house of Israel shall possess them in the land of the Lord for servants and handmaids. You see, there's going to be a switcheroo here. Israel's going to take them. Israel's going to be able to bind them. They're going to be able to hold them and take their possessions from them, whose captives they were, and they shall rule over their oppressors. Now come to verse 17 of this same book here, same chapter. Now here's something that Lucifer is noted for. He takes prisoners and he will not release them. And that's the whole idea of the captivity, the binding, the possession, holding them fast, not letting them go, and so forth. And it says, you made the world a wilderness and destroyed the cities thereof. You open not the house of your prisoners. You're going to hold them fast forever. That's it. Once you're taken captive by Lucifer, he incarcerates you and you are held by him forever. He's never going to let you go. Now, let's note a couple more in this same book, Isaiah 49. Isaiah 49 and verse number 24. Shall the prey be taken from the mighty, or the lawful captor delivered? Now, why is Israel, as was Adam, why are they a lawful captive? Because the rules of the game were known ahead of time. They entered into the game both knowing full well that winner takes all here. That if they sinned, if they did wrong, they were going to forfeit their possessions and their blessings. So it's a lawful captivity. However, it's unlawful in the sense that it's against the will of God. Where am I here? 49:24. But thus says the Lord, even the captives of the mighty shall be taken away, and the prey of the terrible shall be delivered, for I will contend with him that contends with you, and I will save your children. I will feed them that oppress you with their own flesh. They'll be drunken with their own blood. Chapter 50 and verse number 8. He is near and justifies me. Who will contend with me, says the Lord? Let's stand together. This is the challenge between Christ and Antichrist, Christ and Lucifer. Let's stand eyeball to eyeball, toe to toe. Let's get it on, as it were. Who is mine adversary? Let him come near to me. Because if Jesus Christ is ever going to retake those possessions, he's the only one who can do it. He is stronger than Antichrist. He's stronger than Lucifer. And he has to rescue Israel from the hand of one that is stronger than he. Now, let's go back to Luke just quickly here. Luke chapter 10. and verse number 17. Now, I'll just give you some things here with regard to this matter of binding, clasping, holding it tight. Jesus said to his disciples, whatsoever you'll do, what on earth shall be done in heaven? Bind. Whatsoever is bound on earth shall be bound in heaven. If you bind it on earth, it's going to be bound in heaven. That has to do not just with human beings, but with their authority over the enemy, over the strong man, and all that he represents. The 70 returned, verse 17, saying, Lord, even the devils are subject to us through thy name. I saw Satan as lightning fall from heaven. Point. Satan came up to heaven to try to take Christ's possession there. And what did Jesus do? He bound him. He sent him right back to earth. He defeated him. I give you power to tread on serpents and scorpions over all the power of the enemy. Nothing shall by any means hurt you. This is the binding power that we're talking about. Satan has Israel, but now Jesus Christ comes and begins the process of binding the strong man and taking the possession from him back into his own clutches, as it were. So, let's go and see a couple of verses here with the time we have remaining regarding this binding. Let's go to Obadiah. Obadiah. Just to the right of Amos. Now, that brings us then to point number 3. The right claw represents Christ possessing his possessions. He binds the strong man, left claw, but then he takes the possessions back, right claw. It's all based on the Abrahamic covenant and the new beginning. So we're in Obadiah chapter 1, look at verse number 15. The day of the Lord is near upon all the heathen. Thou hast done, it shall be done unto thee. As you've done it, heathen, you've spoiled my people, you've taken them captive, you've taken all of their possessions. Your reward is going to be upon your own head. Upon Mount Zion shall be deliverance, and there shall be holiness, and the house of Jacob shall possess their possessions. You see, right now, they're just holding on as to their possessions. They still don't have all of them. They certainly don't have the kingdom and the glory promised by God to them in these covenants. But it says, Israel's going to possess your possessions. Verse number 21, Saviors shall come to Mount Zion, and judge on the Mount of Esau, and the kingdom shall be the Lord's. When we pray now, thy kingdom come, what a joke. It can't even be started until that whole set of things be brought in motion to where there's going to be the end times. And that strong man stands up, Antichrist, and Jesus Christ binds him. Okay? Let's go to, we're here near Amos here. Let's go to chapter 9. Verse 11. In that day I'll raise the tabernacle of David that's fallen. I'll raise his ruins, build it as in the days of old, that they might possess, that's the whole thing, their possessions. The days come, saith the Lord, the plowman shall overtake the reaper, treader of grapes, him that sows seed. Mountains shall drop sweet wine, the hills will melt. I'll bring again the captivity of Israel, and they'll build the waste cities. On it goes. I will, verse 15, plant them upon their land. It's their land. It's their possession. They don't have it totally yet, but they're going to have it. And that's the right claw. Jesus Christ will come back and wrench it from the grasp of Antichrist and give it to Israel, those who rightfully deserve it. All right? Before we go to Jeremiah here, let's go to Zechariah chapter 8. almost out of time. Zechariah chapter 8, verse 12. There it says, "For the seed shall be prosperous, the vine shall give her fruit, the ground shall give increase, the heavens shall give their due, and I will cause the remnant of this people to possess all these things." Once Christ comes back, once the strong man is bound, then with his own power, he can clutch these things and keep them forever. One more portion and we're done. Jeremiah 30. And verse 10. "Therefore thou shalt fear not, rather, O my servant. Don't be dismayed. I'll save you from afar. I'll bring your seed from captivity, those who are holding them in their clutches. You'll return and be in rest and not be afraid. I'll make a full end," verse 11, "of all the nations where I've scattered you." Verse number 16. "Therefore, all they that devour thee shall be devoured. All your adversaries, every one of them, they'll go into captivity. They that spoiled you shall be a spoil. And all that prey upon thee, I'll give you for a prey." See, it's a switcheroo. Satan got it, Antichrist got it, Jesus Christ comes back, he binds him, and then he takes it from them. A couple more verses here. Verse 18. "I'll bring again the captivity of Israel, and mercy on his dwellings. Out of them shall proceed thanksgiving, a merry voice. I'll multiply them. There'll not be a few. Their children also shall be as aforetime. And I'll punish," last part of verse number 20, "punish them that oppress thee." And it says when he's going to do this, "Fierce anger of the Lord shall not return until he has done it all, until he has performed the intents of his heart. In the latter days ye shall consider it." Okay, that brings us then to the end here. But I like all of these pictures. I think they're cute, and God has them. But the crab here, I like. He's one of my favorites. Next time we will start then with Leo the lion.